the dreams of man, the instinct of animals, in short, that all physical and mental phenomena are governed by law, absolute, eternal, and inexorable. Let it be understood, by the term law is meant the same invariable relations of succession and resemblance predicated of all facts, springing from like conditions. Law is a fact, not a cause. It is a fact that like conditions produce like results. This fact is law. When we say that the universe is governed by law, we mean that this fact called law is incapable of change; that it is, has been, and forever will be the same inexorable, immutable fact, inseparable from all phenomena. Law in this sense was not enacted or made. It could not have been otherwise than as it is. That which necessarily exists has no creator. Only a few years ago this earth was considered the real center of the universe. All the stars were supposed to revolve around this insignificant atom. The German mind, more than any other, has done away with this piece of egotism. Purbach and Mullerus, in the 15th century, contributed most to the advancement of astronomy in their day. To the latter the world is indebted for the introduction of decimal fractions, which completed our arithmetical notation, and formed the second of the three steps by which in modern times the science of numbers has been so greatly improved. And yet both of these men believed in the most childish absurdities, at least in enough of them to die without their orthodoxy having ever been questioned. Next came the great Copernicus, and he stands at the head of the heroic thinkers of his time, who had the courage and the mental strength to break the chains of prejudice, custom, and authority, and to establish truth on the basis of experience, observation, and reason. He removed the earth, so to speak, from the center of the universe, and ascribed to it a twofold motion, and demonstrated the true position which it occupies in the solar system. At his bidding the earth began to revolve. At the command of his genius it commenced its grand flight amid the eternal constellations around the sun. For 50 years his discoveries were disregarded. All at once, by the exertions of Galileo, they were kindled into so grand a conflagration as to consume the philosophy of Aristotle, to alarm the hierarchy of Rome, and to threaten the existence of every opinion not founded upon experience, observation, and reason. The earth was no longer considered a universe, governed by the caprices of some revengeful deity, who had made the stars out of what he had left after completing the world, and had stuck them in the sky simply to adorn the night. I have said this much concerning astronomy because it was the first splendid step forward, the first sublime blow that shattered the lance and shivered the shield of superstition, the first real help that man received from heaven. Because it was the first great lever placed beneath the altar of a false religion, the first revelation of the infinite to man, the first authoritative declaration that the universe is governed by law, the first science that gave the lie direct to the cosmogony of barbarism, and because it is the sublimest victory that reason has achieved. In speaking of astronomy, I have confined myself to the discoveries made since the revival of learning. Long ago, on the banks of the Ganges, ages before Copernicus lived, Aryabhata taught that the earth is a sphere and revolves on its own axis. This, however, does not detract from the glory of the great German. The discovery of the Hindu had been lost in the midnight of Europe, in the age of faith, and Copernicus was as much a discoverer as though Aryabhata had never lived. In this short address there is no time to speak of other sciences, and to point out the particular evidence furnished by each to establish the dominion of law. nor to more than mention the names of Descartes, the first who undertook to give an explanation of the celestial motions, or who formed the vast and philosophic conception of reducing all phenomena of the universe to the same law; of Montaigne, one of the heroes of common sense; of Galvani, whose experiments gave the telegraph to the world; of Voltaire, who contributed more than any other of the sons of men to the destruction of religious intolerance; of Auguste Comte, whose genius erected to itself a monument that still touches the stars; of Gutenberg, Watt, Stevenson, Arkwright, all soldiers of science in the grand army of the dead kings. The glory of science is that it is freeing the soul, breaking the mental manacles, getting the brain out of bondage, giving courage to thought, filling the world with mercy, justice and joy. Science found agriculture plowing with a stick, reaping with a sickle, commerce at the mercy of the treacherous waves and the inconstant winds, a world without books, without schools, man denying the authority of reason, employing his ingenuity in the manufacture of instruments of torture, in building inquisitions and cathedrals. It found the land filled with malicious monks, with persecuting Protestants and the burners of men. It found a world full of fear, ignorance on its knees, credulity the greatest virtue, women treated like beasts of burden, cruelty the only means of reformation. It found the world at the mercy of disease and famine, men trying to read their fates in the stars, and to tell their fortunes by signs and wonders; generals thinking to conquer their enemies by making the sign of the cross, or by telling a rosary. It found all history full of petty and ridiculous falsehood, and the Almighty was supposed to spend most of his time turning sticks into snakes, drowning boys for swimming on Sunday, and killing little children for the purpose of converting their parents. It found the earth filled with slaves and tyrants, the people in all countries downtrodden, half naked, half starved, without hope, and without reason in the world. Such was the condition of man when the morning of science dawned upon his brain, and before he had heard the sublime declaration that the universe is governed by law. For the change that has taken place we are indebted solely to science, the only lever capable of raising mankind. Abject faith is barbarism. Reason is civilization. To obey is slavish. To act from a sense of obligation perceived by the reason is noble. Ignorance worships mystery. Reason explains it. The one grovels, the other soars. No wonder that fable is the enemy of knowledge. A man with a false diamond shuns the society of lapidaries, and it is upon this principle that superstition abhors science. In all ages the people have honored those who dishonored them. They have worshiped their destroyers. They have canonized the most gigantic liars, and buried the great thieves in marble and gold. Under the loftiest monuments sleep the dust of murder. Imposture has always worn a crown. The world is beginning to change because the people are beginning to think. To think is to advance. Everywhere the great minds are investigating the creeds and the superstitions of men, the phenomena of nature and the laws of things. At the head of this great army of investigators stood Humboldt, the serene leader of an intellectual host, a king by the suffrage of science and the divine right of genius. And today we are not honoring some butcher called a soldier, some wily politician called a statesman, some robber called a king, nor some malicious metaphysician called a saint. We are honoring the grand Humboldt, whose victories were all achieved in the arena of thought, who destroyed prejudice, ignorance and error, not men; who shed light, not blood, and who contributed